What is up, you guys? Chet Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with my podcast interview series, Fascinating People and Extraordinary Stories. In this month of November, I've decided to go with a particular topic. If you kept up with the last vlog, not vlog interview, I interviewed Mr. Nomad Ben. He's an up and coming vlogger here on this wonderful platform we call YouTube. Well, as a continuation of my podcast series for this month, I am interviewing a gentleman who runs an award-winning podcast. Also, he has a YouTube channel that has acquired about 2,000 subscribers. Anyway, really, really awesome. Anyway, I'm going to bring on. What am I trying to say? I'm going to bring on my friend Dakota Blade Carmichael. What's up, Dakota?
What's going on, everybody? Chad, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. It's a pretty sweet evening. Although it's gotten dark outside and it's only anyway, it was about 6 o'clock. But anyway, this whole time thing is long story short, I'm doing pretty good. But anyway, Dakota, would you care introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and I guess how we got here, pretty much.
Well, my name's Dakota Carmichael, obviously. I'm an explorer, public speaker, and historian. I've been making videos on YouTube, and I ran the Facebook page for the same name since 2016, roughly. The channel as a whole, all of it, has won 2 awards. The first one from the East Tennessee Preservation Alliance, the second one from the East Tennessee Historical Society, for which I'm also a member of. Both of them were for community history related events. I cover all kinds of stuff. History, explore videos. There you go. History, I explore buildings and stuff like that. And I ran into Chet because he was trying to find some information on a caboose. And I am somehow I'm just good at finding obscure information. And what's going on, Shayla? And I sent it to him, and it just kind of went from there.
Because I was just going to say, I mean, it's so bizarre because it's like I was trying to find some informations on these locomotives that were just sitting out in the middle of, Shelbyville, which is, Bedford County, Tennessee. And like he was saying, I mean, I didn't know anything. Out of the blue, Dakota comes out here and he starts it's like sending me all this information. I'm like, holy crap, how did he do that? That is awesome. But anyway, how did you get into the whole podcast realm of things? What was the genesis of that? How did that get started?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a question within a question, but for a general answer, at that point, there was really no solid place in Hamlin around this area that done the sort of thing that I do. I'm not saying that I was the first or anything like that, but there just wasn't. So there was a house up here. It's called the Riggs House, and my great grandparents lived. And we'll get to this picture here in just a minute. And okay. They lived right around the corner, and I passed by that house ever so often going to visit them. And one day I just got mad because I couldn't find anything out about it, and I started asking them and my grandfather about it, and took some pictures and made my first and admittedly very crappy video, but I leave it up for learning purposes. We got to start and we got to learn somewhere.
Yep, that's true. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the first video I really made. It was on my grandfather's property, which was out in Creston, North Carolina. But God, I mean, there's almost really nothing left there. But Anyway, I mean that kind of sounds like it's something that I guess that kind of happened with me too. It's like, I mean, I think what really happened is, well, let me reiterate. I mean, I've always kind of had like a bit of an interest in history. Um, I think mine really kind of started, gosh, during like Civil War, Bradley County. I guess that's where mine came from. But anyway, like so explain to me what this is right here. This looks pretty sweet.
Okay, so just without any context, the next picture is going to be a little bit more self-explanatory. So without any context, you do explorations, from what I gather, what I see. You're
Yep.
walking through the woods and you see these two gargantuan brick pillars with stairs and a sidewalk with rails leading up to it. You walk up the stairs, which walk up, and then it curves and goes on to like a little platform. There's my pops, Super Squid.
Awesome.
Um, you walk up there, and there is this remains of this humongous building. This was a 4-story building that just caught on fire and collapsed. And you're sitting there looking at it, and you just get a picture in your mind of just you're standing there, and you can look up and you can practically see it in your own mind. So what it is, in short, is this is the home building at the Pressman's home. I got to explore the whole complex, and of course, obviously, there's nothing left of it besides what you see there. But yeah, that's one of the coolest things I've ever got to do.
Hmm. Like, were you able to like go out and do like any metal detecting or anything like that, or?
Well, the Pressman's home, it's only really been around since like 1910. There's, I'm sure there's artifacts there, but really just be modern trash. Um, but all it was is like it was the largest union complex in the in the United States with members. It had over 140,000 members worldwide. It was for
Really?
printing pressmen, the old printing presses they used to have. This was in Rogersville, and this was the largest union-owned complex in the world.
Hmm.
And it's
That
reduced
is
to
really
nothing.
impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I know you in the photos that you sent me two. So I guess what like wait, is that the one that the because I know you sent me two photos,
Yeah,
and
these are in order.
huh, they're in
They're
order.
they're in like an order. This people recognize that building if they've been by there.
Hmm. Now, what exactly is this building? Is it similar to the photo that we just overlooked or just looked, or?
It kind of is. So the Pressman's home had, if I recall, somebody quote me on it. It had like 8 or 9 different buildings. It
Hmm.
basically was a city within a city. This one here, that building is the administration building. That's where all the international offices were, or international officer uh, office spaces were, president's office, all that. Now, before that, this was where they actually taught the trade, which is really interesting. But and then, of course, I didn't include a picture of it, but the building beside of it, it's called the trade school. It's like 6 stories tall. It still has all the printing equipment in it.
Really?
It did. It did. I'll say that it did. County historian says it was removed at some point in the last 10 years. He said he thought some of it was still there. In short, it had hotel, a 220 room sandstone hotel, the only union owned church in the United States, uh, trade school, administration building, tuberculosis sanatorium, power plant. It made its own hydroelectric power 20 years before TVA even knew what it was doing. Made its own
Really?
food. Yeah, it made its own food. You get the idea. I've covered it pretty extensively on my channel. I was going to write a book about it for all of my fans that are watching. I was going to write a book about it, but I found out somebody else had tried. He was a good friend of mine, and I didn't really want to step on his toes, so I just kind of nope.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you there. I mean, it's like, so where's this building exactly located at again?
It's in Hawkins County, about 20 minutes from town. It's in a pretty rural setting. Um, in fact, if I highly discourage going out there because it's so far away from any kind of help, and we'll kind of just leave that right there.
Well, I mean, I feel you there. I mean, some of these places. I know we were talking before the podcast before. Pardon me. Before we went live, and you were just kind of telling me, some of these places, where some of these places are at, and some of the people that live in that community, they are the police. And yeah, 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 we'll just leave it at there. So I mean, so kind of tell me what like some of these projects that you've worked on. I know you told me recently about this one that you're working on with the locomotive, the short lines, and the lines that ran through Scott County and all these other locations.
Yeah. So, like I was telling you, my mom's side of the family, they all come from down in the Morgan, Anderson, and Roane County area down there around Windrock Mountain. Um, and I've heard stories from my uncles and from my great grandfather about how things were back then. Um, and I was going back there with them one day, going to a family cemetery, and we crossed railroad tracks and on top of a mountain, you know. And I said, well, "What in the world's that?" And I took a picture of it, and we went home and researched it, and turns out it's actually was a part of the former Tennessee Railroad, which in itself is a pretty important piece of transportation and likewise history. Um, it They sent out, I think, 200 cars of coal a day all the way up until they stopped mining in there in about 2004. And then from that point, there was a company called the New River Scenic Railway. They started doing excursions going from Oneida Depot up to the top of the mountain and back. And they would, of course, they'd pick up people, take them back to Oneida, get their groceries, whatever. Uh, R.J. Corman actually stopped it. He bought the line, said, "I don't want any lines, any trains running on this line any longer." Just kind of killed it. Uh, Fast forward, the depot got burned down, and you've seen what the train looks like.
Yep.
It looked like somebody took a hammer to a pile of mud.
Yep.
Uh, the guys, I'm real good friends with them. They run a project called Save the Tennessee Railway. You can find it on Facebook, and they're a group of people, and they're trying to get R.J. Corman and the Surface Transportation Board to reverse the decision for abandonment of that line. Because I don't know how many of your people are familiar with that area, but when coal left, it pretty much killed it. There's nothing back there, and their thought is that if they can get rail access going back to that area, it'll bring it'll encourage industry and development to go back into there and tourism and bring money to an otherwise basically dead economy.
Yep. I mean, because as you were saying, I mean, I know recently I did a video on, I think it was about seven derailed coal cars that was out in that area. I mean, there is like it's gone. Like I mean, in some of the like the railroad that runs through there, the rails. I mean, you have trees that are quite literally growing up through the trestles. I mean, I'm probably saying they're about that wide in circumference. I mean, it's like I mean, it would take a lot of work to get that rail, working again. But at the same time, I mean, it would be totally worth it. Or, if not, getting a tourist train. I mean, that would be amazing. Like, so, I mean, wait, I have to send you some stuff. Looks like Shayla, pardon me, Shayla. Shayla Sosa. I have to send you some stuff on some land my dad's side. Okay, awesome. Anyway, but sorry, ADHD moment. And I know you did send me another photo. I believe it's this one right here. Now, that's a part of one of the lines, correct?
Yes, so that one is in Marshtown. Well, that's in Granger County, but you get the point.
Hmm.
So a long time ago, there was a series of videos posted on YouTube uh, about some kind of centennial celebration here in the county, and it showed a train going right through the middle of downtown, going the opposite way that the main line goes. I was like, "What? What? That's not there. What is that?" And so I started doing some digging on maps and found out that there's a train actually went through there and stopped at a power plant. Well, last year I actually found a map from the 1850s that shows that line going all the way through, and it was they called it the Cincinnati, Cumberland Gap, and Charleston Railroad. And from what I've read, and there's very limited info on it, this would have been the longest rail link in the United States prior to the Transcontinental Railroad being built. That part right there specifically is actually part of the old rail bed, and that's where that's on public lands now. But to just kind of keep it shorten up the history because it's pretty extensive. Hauled coal and passengers coming from Morristown, going to Bean Station Depot through Rutledge and into Luttrell down in that area. Then it linked up with the Knoxville and Cumberland Gap, which that predates L and N.
Yep.
And when TVA started building the Cherokee Dam, they pulled the tracks up, and this is actually uh, one of the only still visible pieces of it. You can go out there and find all kinds of railroad ties and similar relics that people haven't disturbed over the years.
Hmm. Now, I know you have done a little bit of metal detecting. Have you ever taken any type of workout like or out in that area, possibly find anything or found anything?
Well, you can't really, since this is state property, you can't really dig on state property or they'll throw a fine. But I did detect on its old path, and I found a couple of smashed pennies where they put them on the rail, and found a couple of extremely old railroad spurs ties. Yeah,
Really?
rail spikes. I'm sorry, railroad spikes. And I got them, and I've put them up somewhere here.
Now that is cool. You know, it almost makes me think about this one story. Have you ever heard the story of oh crap? It's called it's in darn it, Monterey, Tennessee. It was the big giant dog statue. Well, it wasn't a dog statue. It was basically this big giant stone monolith that looked like a dog.
I feel like I remember you posting that. I read it and I was like, what is this? I tried to do some information on it and or dig some information up on it, and I couldn't find anything. It's supposed to be, if I remember right, it was supposed to have been put there by like the Native Americans. Was it?
Yep,
Is that correct?
yep,
Okay, yeah, I remember it. Like some kind of weird wolf statue, and there's only one picture of it that exists.
yep. Like I mean, it's the only thing, and it was right before they blew it up. Um, what had happened is when the the railroad was coming through Monterey, the whole coal company, um, one of the things that they had an issue with is they were pretty much stuck dead in lock with this statue, and it was either they blow up the statue or not do anything. They just couldn't get around it. But yeah, they had to blow it up. Um, Actually, if you want to read up on it, a little more about it, have you ever heard of the book called Weird Tennessee?
I have not.
Okay, find yourself a copy of that. it will rock your world. Like, I mean, there is just so much. Like, it'll Facebook user, howdy fellas. Anyway, sorry, I'm just kind of reading through the comments. Um, Wonder who that Facebook user is. Howdy. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's another interesting story. I mean, especially about the Native American story. Or what not story, but the Native American history that is here in the East Tennessee area. And because it's like I know, especially like the Chittata Wall, Shady Wall, whatever you want to call it. If you're from this part of Bradley County, I mean, it'd be what because they'll correct you for it quite a bit because I found that out the hard way. Some people say Chatta, Shady, anyway. But I'm trying to think where I was going with that. Anyway, but so kind of tell me about what you've kind of done with your well, like what am I trying to say? Um, with your like I know you were saying that you're on the a member of the East the pres darn it
East
society.
Tennessee
Tell
Historical
me more a little
Society.
bit more about huh?
East Tennessee Historical Society.
Yes, that.
Um, well, I presented somebody down there with like a potential project, and it didn't really go anywhere. And long story short, I made good friends with Warren Doctor, and I've collabed with him and Rebecca P. Simmer and a bunch of the people from down there in that area because they also run the McClung Museum, or they're close in tied with it. So they're really nice people, and I love working with them. They're very smart, and which you can also get a membership for. You can visit their website for all the details. They do all kinds of events in the Knoxville area. Uh, Send out publications called like the First Families of Tennessee, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Well, darn it. What was I know I was gonna say something. I had a question. Let me pull it up. I know you had sent me this photo right here. Who exactly is this gentleman? What?
Okay, so that's the coolest thing I've ever actually sat down to do. Um, Everything I've done is my favorite, but this is my top favorite. This is a 93-year-old man. His name is Dean Miller, and um, the late president of the Hamlin County Genealogical Society shot me a message. She really liked what I did on my Facebook page. She was good friends with me. She said, "Hey, I've got a friend. He lives in Knoxville. He's getting dementia really bad, and he is kind of upset that he doesn't have anybody that wants to sit and listen to his stories. And if you've ever hollered at your dog and its ears stood up, well, that's what happened." She gave me his phone number, and I called him, and his wife answered. That's her off to the side there, uh, and she put him on the phone. And I didn't even meet the man, and I just said, "Hey, Arlene Sides is a mutual friend. She wanted me to holler at you." I said, "Yeah, she was telling me about you," and he just started going off on his stories. Just I didn't even know them, never even met him, and he was going off over the phone. So we agreed to meet at the Cracker Barrel uh, off of I-640 in Knoxville, and it was cold outside. I wanted to do it outside, but I didn't want, he didn't want to be in the weather, and I didn't want to be either. Uh, Sit down, and I didn't even have time to get my GoPro going. He just started spitting out stories, uh, and we actually sat there for so long that I went through 2 GoPro batteries, and my GoPro got so hot that it turned off. And
Oh,
some of the stories that he was telling was stuff that I'd never heard from anybody else ever, because he was born in like very very late 20s.
yeah.
Um, he is talking about the house he grew up in. He could tell you that each room in that house was made out of a different kind of wood that was made by a slave boy, a slave
Really?
woodworker. Yes, that's what he said. I've never actually dug into the history of that house. It still actually stands. His talking about caves. Said how his grandmother was a witch, and this is a funny story. Uh, Said his grandmother was a witch, and said when she died, she wanted to be put in a coffin made out of a hickory tree. She said so that way she can go popping and cracking on the way down to hell. That was the words out of his mouth.
Oh, oh God.
And that's actually that's a two-part film. It's 45 minutes, and it's in one of those videos somewhere. It's some of the best storytelling ever.
And this gentleman had, oh my goodness, that must have been quite a conversation.
It was because I had stuff that I'd wanted to ask him about, and well, he knew the answers. You know, it's like a kid in a candy store. You know, you don't know what question to ask.
I mean, it's like, it sounds awesome. I wish I could record my great. Oh, Shayla. Pardon me, Shayla. For,
She's on my friends list on Facebook.
okay.
She's a friend of
Yeah,
mine.
that sounds awesome. I wish I could have recorded my great mama Edith Cowan before she died. Born in 1919. Now that would have been an interesting conversation. That kind of do what?
To play off of that, something that my dad uh, has told me before. My great grandmother was born in 1917 in Rogersville, and he said he was doing a history project, and he'll get mad at me later for messing up his story, but some kind of history project involving the Great Depression, and great grandpa was born in 1909. He went home and asked Granny and Grandpa about the Great Depression and how they lived through it, and they said, what was the Great Depression?" They didn't know what it was. They were so poor that they didn't know what it was. And she
Oh
actually
wow!
lived until 2002. So I got some stories out of her that I kind of remember too.
You know that actually kind of reminds me of my great grandfather. My well, we always call it the family called him Pop, and he lived. Let me see. He lived to be 93. He lived to true story, Super Squid. Um, anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, my great grandfather, George Smith, who is my grandmother's father. He was also brought up during the Great Depression, but the only thing that he could ever really tell us, like or me growing up and my mother growing up and my mama, my grandmother, was that, I mean, it was pretty much, I mean, they were poor back then and they just got a little bit poorer. They lived in a dirt room shack out in the middle of nowhere, and that's kind of how they lived. But another thing, now this is a cool thing about my pop is that when the Great Depression happened, not long after that, my great 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 grandfather decided to leave my great 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 grandmother. Well, I think I'm saying that right, or my great great grandfather. Anyway, my pop has to drop out of school in the third grade to take care of their family. I think it was like, gosh, like a family of nine, family of eight. Back then, families were a little bit bigger than they are now. But I remember it's like the man couldn't read or write, but still he managed to retire at the age of like 50. He basically, when the New Deal came in, in the 30s, I think it was the 30s, he went to work for TVA, and that's how he retired. He was a welder. So at least that's from as far as what or at least the other stories that my mom would often tell, like this is like, I think he must have been like 70 when this happened, but my mom and dad had just gotten married, and my mother bought a purebred cat. like a purebred kitten, $150 back in 1988, I believe. And I just clearly, I mean, this is the story that often gets passed around my family, is that my great grandfather said, "Wow, dang, I sure could get a bag of cats for that much money." And and God, I mean, again, I mean, it's one of those things that I wish I had kind of just sat down and listened, because gosh, I mean, that the depression era was one of those things that, you would just kind of have to live through, kind of like the pandemic that we had. Um, gosh, but I was kind of looking through some of your videos, and I saw like you went through one house that was like over 200 years old, I believe.
Went
Um,
through several of those.
oh, let me see. Let me pull it up. Because I'm on YouTube right now. I mean, I watch. One second, let me find it, because I watched a bit of it, and 1 second, just trying to remember what the name of it was. By the way, your narrate. By the way, Dakota, I will say this: your narration skills are a heck of a lot better than mine. I'll say that much.
It was
Like,
very, very hard because I used to do
I
text. I used to do text on to the videos and receive. I started receiving feedback that people they'd rather hear it narrated, kind of, sort of like a podcast. And so I had to learn how to speak without saying so many times. You're in the
yeah,
you're where we're at. We're in the South. Is just a part of your every five
yep,
second vocabulary.
yep, yep. That's pretty much how it goes. I mean, because, well, my thing is, I mean, people would often tell me like, "Oh, you have too much of a draw." Well, not a draw, but well, some people have often said I sound like I'm talking in a William Shatner type voice, and it's like, well, gee, thank you. And one person said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, don't quit your day job," and I'm like, "Wow, thank you, Karen."
Yeah, for real.
Um, See, I'm trying to find the one that kind of sparked. Oh, that's what it was. Relic hunting beneath a 240-year-old cabin. That was it.
Okay, so that's a funny story. So I'm a member on the board of directors with a restoration project up here. It's called Hayslope, and it is a 237-year-old original log cabin. It's the second oldest here in the county. Um, the owner and I, uh, we've been trying to go through and dig through some of the history at this point, and we had just gotten the tenants out of the house. And my digging buddy, he had found a 1782 Spanish real under the floor. Under the
Really?
floor. Yeah, that's weird. Like, what's it doing under there? Anyway, um, she had wanted to see what the underneath of the house looks like because it has come to find out it has one of the second oldest, or one of the first five, possibly, I'll say, possibly one of the first few stick frame buildings in the state. Of course, we went under there and we was trying to sift through all the dirt, couldn't breathe, kicking up that dust everywhere, but didn't find anything significant for that matter. And the house is actually one of the pictures that I sent you to. It's the double picture.
Right here?
Yeah, yes. So that's not a modern picture. It looks a lot better than that because we're going through restoration. But anyway, we was going under the cabin and we got into the original part where the original chimney is, and I found a blue rock with 3 stars on it. A blue triangular
Really?
rock with 3 stars on it, and I left it under there. And I'm going to go back and get it sometime. But yeah, so just to kind of lead into the next little bit here, this is Hayslope, of course. It has American chestnut, wood siding on the inside of the wall, covering the original 237-year-old, we think, yellow pine logs. It still has the original chinking material in the wall.
Really?
Yes. And we had just
Dang.
actually, we just got done. This was about a month ago. We had both of the chimneys took down and rebuilt from the ground up, the way they would have been built, because somebody had redone them at some point, we think, uh, and they was in bad shape. It was the original brick. We think they might have restacked it. It was just weird.
That is really cool. Now, I guess in the process of well restoring this, like what all well, I know you've already named off a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, have you found anything more like I guess what's the significance with that blue rock that you just mentioned?
I don't know. I've never seen another one. I've researched it and I've never seen anything like it. I'm thinking it could have just been something from like maybe the original owner put it there, or maybe the second owners. I don't know, because Tennessee wasn't a state when that house was built, and it wouldn't be a state for another 15, 14, 15 years at that point. So it's just kind of strange and peculiar. Now we have found on the logs, those the stencil drawings that people do, like the geometric flowers and stuff like that. There is one of
Yeah.
those on the wall, and I'll send you the picture I took of it.
Now that would be amazing.
Of course, when they came over from wherever it was they came from, they brought their old superstitions with them here, and that's what we think it is. It could have just been a stencil drawing, but I like to be a little naive and say it's some kind of weird European thing.
Hmm. Possibly. So I mean, like I guess kind of sounds like have you all like do you all like know the people like who built it? Anything related to them by chance or who they were?
Oh yeah, we know every member of the family that has lived in that house since it was built. So the guy that built it, his name was Colonel James Roddy. He was, if I recall, he was a signer of the Tennessee Constitution, of course, Revolutionary War vet. Now, if you're up to date on your history, you'll know that the Roddy family, well, they went on to be the family that founded Coke. Now yes, they only lived there until about 1830, I think, 20 or 30, and then another family bought it, and they turned it into a resort of sorts. They had like a bunch of it was called the Tavern with the Red Door in the 1770s, 1780s, up until that point, and then it got the name Hayslope when the second family moved into it, and they built a bunch of huge resort houses. That we think there was as many as 9 resort houses,
Nine.
and it was right beside of the Great Stage Road. That comes right up through basically the middle of Hamlin County. So, and then the current owner, her family has owned it since I want to say the 1890s, maybe between 1890s and 1910 is whenever her family came into owning it, and then it was just kind of like a farm at that point.
That is quite a
We have enough history on this house to write a book on, and there is a book on it. In
really.
fact, to get into some Civil War history, General James Longstreet, he camped. He had a winter headquarters here in Hamlin County, and when he came through here in the winter of '63, he brought somewhere between 20 and 25,000 troops with him, and they were camped around this house because less than a quarter of a mile away from this house is his winter headquarters, the Longstreet Museum, and we have found all kinds of bullets there.
Have you found any cannons?
I wish we could find a cannon. Uh, you'd never see me again.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think about well, I mean, I'm from the Bradley County area. I mean, it's like, not far from Cleveland, you have Charleston, Tennessee. In Charleston, Tennessee, that was that was where General Sherman and his men camped out at. It's very interesting because if you go out into that area, you will see the train bridge. That was the whole reason why they were out there. It was because that train bridge was one of the main lines going in and out of Chattanooga and down into Atlanta. And if you go down further into that, you have the Julius Rott House. Julius Rott during the Civil War, was the richest man in the state. And there's allegedly oh, what is it? I did a video on it, but there is at least, well, I can't say allegedly because they did find something on it, but a tunnel system that runs beneath that house and goes all the way down to the train depot, which is right across the street.
Well, that's interesting.
That's like I said, it's like, again, it's the stuff that you wouldn't think to be there. And I believe when Cleveland was taken, or when the Union had captured Cleveland, Tennessee, I think it was 1863. General Sherman and his men, their headquarters was in the Julius Rott House. So you have like this old house. By the way, it's up for sale if you got $600,000. But if you're looking around the area, you got a couple of bad neighborhoods. The foundation, what used to be Whirlpool, or one of their manufacturing facilities, there were over 20,000 men that camped out around that building. Like pretty much the same thing with the Hayslope building. It's like, well, I guess what's the end goal exactly? Like, are y'all planning to get a state marker, or what?
So it does have a state marker, albeit it's not really close to the house. It's up on the highway. It's kind of weird. So far, the plans for the house is, at least for the time being, we're going to try and turn it into like an Airbnb/venue. It's going to We'll be able to stay in a house that's put up about exactly as it would have been back then. Now, I'll reveal a little bit of information here that nobody kind of knows yet. We took a walk through the property, and two of the people on our board of directors are, one of them is an arborist, she studies trees, and the other one, well, they both kind of study trees, and the other one is a plant specialist. And we was going back through there, and they're like, yeah, that's what they say, rabbit eye berries. There's a ginger there. This is a shagbark hickory, stuff like that. And there's a 170-year-old birch tree, and over there's a 120-year-old maple tree, and we got it in our head that we're going to try and teach how they would have cooked back then using only natural resources, or at least have classes or some kind of classes on it. That's kind of the end goal. That'll be kind of like part of the venue aspect of it. So before Mrs. Wildmoon and Mrs. Gray, the project manager, murders me, I'll shut up. Because we don't want to spoil the surprise for anybody. I'll say we've got some plans for it, and we're not too far away, and right now we're doing some work. Of course, we mentioned the chimneys, tearing down a rear addition of the house that's kind of unstable. It takes away from the house, sort of. Just to tell you about the house itself a little bit, it's a original 14 by 18 log cabin. It was a one roomer with a loft. He added on the second part that you see off to the far right there, which is what we think to be the first one of the first few stick buildings in the state. And that the bottom picture there is, I don't know when that picture was taken. I think it was very late 1800s, and that's the Great Stage Road, the Great Kentucky Road going right beside of it. And you can still go back there and see wagon tracks in the dirt. Yes.
Now that is cool.
Yes, it is very cool, because I like to have died when I went back there. Oh my God, this is a wagon track.
And I'm just baffled that there's so much history surrounding that building. Like, I'm gonna have to add that to one of my vlogs. That is it. Honestly, like, I mean, I sent you the video, but the old Hooper Mill, the old Hooper Mill, like, no joke. I mean, I was out there metal detecting, and I don't have a picture with it or with me on here, but I put like I or my foot got caught on a it was a broken hoe head, and I'm just thinking, if that's there, I wonder if I can find like the actual, like the mill or not the mill, the grindstone. But oh no, I guess that's neither here nor there. But I guess I'm a little bit curious too. I saw that you went into a hardware store. How did or it was an abandoned hardware store?
Yes. Okay, so a lot of people are upset with the state of that building because it's one of those things. It's a public staple. Everybody knows it. You know, most people older than, I want to say, 35 have actually been in it when it was still operating as a store. Um, in short, the current owner, her dad died, and like several months prior. Um, this was last year. I waited a long time to upload it. She inherited the buildings that she didn't know she had because she got a huge tax fine from the city because she didn't know she had it because her dad had leased it to two individuals who took all the goodies out of it and left them to sit. And sitting is the worst thing on any building, period. Um, so that building is called the Bradley's Pro Hardware Building, and people from Marshall are known as the Hardware Store, Hassan Bryan Hardware Store. Now, at the time that I went in there, we had to walk around the wall on the edge of the wall to keep from falling through the floor. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
there, and if you watch the video, we go into the next room early in the video, and there's a huge hole where if you went over to it, and I'm not going to say if I did or didn't, you could see water falling straight through all 4 floors into a hole in the basement.
Okay, that sounds pretty. Do I?
Well, that's just one example of why some of the people on my page have given me the nickname the real Indiana Jones because of stupidity and going into very dangerous buildings.
Well, I mean, I think I might have you beat on that. If you go through and you look through my catalog of videos, um, well, are you? I guess first off, are you familiar with the Tellico Roundhouse out in Tellico Plains?
Yes.
Okay, well, anyway, as you are probably familiar with that area, like if you go back, they have slate mines. Slate mines. I think from, gosh, I think it was the 30s or the 40s. I think, but anyway, I know like the property had changed hands. The guy didn't like people being out there, so I just took an opportunity while I could. Anyway, I went into one of the slate mines, and like no joke, you could see where everything was finally collapsing in, and I was in one of the caves. That's sketchy. That
Yeah, that's
that
pretty
is
bad.
pure stupidity at its finest.
I'll say what it didn't show in the video was me going up to the fourth floor. Um,
Oh god. Now,
um,
tell me, I gotta
now,
hear this story.
so the owner was with me, of course. We went all the way up to the very tip top of that building, and when the further up you went, the worse it got. It got to the point where we was walking only on the floor joists. And we get up to the fourth floor, and I am not even kidding. God strike me dead. The roof had fell and separated from the masonry a full 3 feet. And the beams in this building were I want to say they were 16 by 16 wide. They're huge, enormous, huge yellow pine beams, and they were You could feel
Okay.
you could feel the building move when the wind blew.
Okay, then. You definitely got me beat on that, then, sir. God, that would freak me out.
I
Uh,
wasn't terrified at all. Of course, you had to watch where you walked. I wasn't terrified in any sense of the word because she said she'd been up there with people, so I trusted her word. And a friend of mine had actually went in before me to take some pictures, and that's kind of what sparked. Okay, I want to go video that, and I want to go video that. So I done some detective work and found out who it was.
oh my God.
And the buildings are for sale. That video went hand in hand with another one that I made. It's an abandoned department store. There's a Parks Milk building, and she was trying to restore that one.
No, I guess the parks building, like how, like I guess what's the current shape of that one? Is it salvageable or I
It's
haven't
very
exactly watched.
salvageable.
Huh?
It's very salvageable. Of course, the floors are buckled, but it's fixable, and she wants to fix it. She's trying to sell them so some way somebody can fix them. Um, like I said, it was a Parks Milk building. It's the same size as the other one, but it had a basement where they put the floor directly over the dirt. Yeah, it's pretty weird the way they done things back then. It's the oldest building, the second oldest building in downtown Marshtown currently, not open to the public.
Really? I'm going to have to vlog a lot of what you just talked about, Dakota. I mean, gosh, well, I
That's,
mean,
that's not the half of it. That's
huh?
not the half of it.
Okay, then you and I are probably going to have to do a collaboration one of these days here soon. But let me see. I had a question about. Well, I mean, this has been on my radar too. Pressman's home, because if I'm not mistaken, I think. Gosh, because I know it's a series of abandoned. Well, 'cause I think didn't it used to be a hospital? I think it used to be a hospital.
Pressman's home.
Yeah,
Hey, you
there was
remember
like
the
some
first two
kind of.
pictures?
Huh?
The first two pictures that is Pressman's home that I put in
Oh,
there. It
sorry.
was the
Total brain fart.
yeah the largest union in the United States.
Sorry, total brain fart. But because I was gonna, like, I swear, it kind of just made me think about this one particular. I don't know. I think we're talking about the same. Anyway, forget that I said anything. My brain has been a plethora of things this entire week. I guess like what
Uh
again, this
oh, he's
is one that
gone.
I haven't exactly
There he is.
watched yet.
There he is.
Do what?
So you cut out on me there,
Oh, my bad.
but there you are. You're back
Um,
now.
okay. This farmhouse that's left right. By the way, everybody, I will put the link to Dakota's channel and podcast in in this interview. But gosh, what was I saying? Um, oh yeah, this farmhouse that's left to rot. I gotta hear. That's probably got to be another interesting story in itself.
So that one's a really cool one too. That's I called it the Carmichael Hamlin House because uh, obviously my last name's Carmichael. I done some digging on that house and found out that an ancestor of mine from a separate line that came over to America from Scotland built. Um, I found out about it because my mom was actually babysat by the lady that lived in that house. Her name was Miss Gladys Moss, and I got put in a nursing home, and the house just kind of left and got bought by the people that lived next door to it. I didn't get to go in that house because he had the door locked, but the porch was it's sitting like that. The roof is it's crumpled into. Uh, I kind of bit my tongue on it, didn't go in, but I walked around it and peeked in the windows, and the floors falling through and all that stuff. Now, I'll tie this in with there's another house. It's called Solitude. It was built by that same like the great grandfather of the people that built the house in the video you're talking about. That house was built by a guy in the name of James Carmichael for Jacob Bewley, who is the political advisor for Andrew Jackson. I couldn't get in it because the back half of the house had collapsed and fell into the basement and pulled the whole rear wall with it. There was no way to get to the stairs to get in the house. I was really sad about it because I wanted to go in it. There's supposed to be a cannonball in the upstairs chimney.
Well, I mean, technically, you probably I wouldn't recommend it, but I don't know. That's a cannonball. Cannonballs from that time. You what usually go for about $100, 125. Eh.
Well, let's go watch the video. You'll see why I didn't go in it.
Well, also speaking of, since we're talking about abandoned homes and whatnot, tell me a little bit about this ghost town you brought up, like while we were talking before before the podcast started. Wasp.
uh, yeah, Wasp. So, obviously, my subject material on my channel is all over the place. I was looking at a very old map and found a place over in Cott County, around just past Del Rio in the Wolf Creek community. It's called Wasp. So, well, that's a very weird name to look to call a town, especially back then, because if you look it up, the only thing you're going to find is an interview from like 2009 and pictures of a bee. So back then, there's a certain period in Appalachian history where we really just wanted to denude the landscape of all trees. There's a cemetery up there, and there's not really much I even know about it. There's a bunch of foundations for some old buildings, a very, very old cemetery with the oldest grave being documented at like 1810, something like that. And that's it. That's it. I want to go up there and see it, but from what I understand, there isn't really much to see, just besides the drive up there. It would be compared to Elkmont, but Elkmont is in a lot better shape.
Yep. Actually, I think didn't they get finished with demolishing the buildings or that were unsalvageable? And I'm not sure if they finished up that project because I remember reading in 2016. You said 2016, 2017. They had finally come to an agreement that they would only keep I think like 19 out of the 55 buildings. I think it was 55, but they just kind of did away with that and whatnot. I was gonna say, have you ever heard of the old Dutch settlement out in it's out in the Ocoee National or Forest? No, Cherokee National Forest. Sorry.
I have not. I was going to play off of Elkmont a little bit and say that Elkmont is pretty popular. When the forestry department bought Elkmont in the 40s, they made a deal with the people that lived there, so they could live there rent free until they died. But their house had to stay in the park. Nobody could live in it. The last resident stayed in Elkmont until, so I think they died in like 1999. That long, with no rent whatsoever.
Now that would have been pretty nice, especially with today's prices. Because it's like $1,500 for like a 1-bedroom apartment, and it's like. Anyway, I won't get into that because that sucks. Because
Yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, it's like, here's the thing. It's like, what happens, when people can't pay it? I mean, I guess that's the bubble bursting again. But
Oh, look, it's
anyway,
2008. Knock, knock, knock.
Yeah, knock on wood, that's for sure. Smile. But anyway, I'll have to send you some information on the old Dutch settlement because what happened with it is it was like right after the Cherokee had been forced out of that area, or on the Trail of Tears, and it was a gentleman from New York that he had the bright idea to basically establish a colony. Well, not a colony, a settlement down in that area, and I think it was started in 1830. Well, anyway, I'll just send it. I'll send it to you. But it's another very interesting story that again another lost Tennessee town. But looks like we are finally coming up on the end of. Looks like we're about winded down. Um. Anyway, thank you Dakota for coming on. It means a lot. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Anyway, guys, remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot. Goes to show that y'all care and that y'all want to see more awesome videos. Next week, I will have Nola Deej, a very well-known vlogger from the New Orleans area, with us. But anyway, you guys, remember, love y'all very much. Peace out, y'all.